Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 1, Chapter 9. About 4 o'clock, Levin left his izvoshchik at the entrance of the zoological garden, and with beating heart followed the path that led to the ice mountains, near the place where there was skating, for he knew that he should find Kitty there, having seen the Sherbatskys' carriage at the gate. It was a beautiful frosty day. At the entrance of the garden there were crowds of carriages, sleighs, hired drivers, policemen. Hosts of fashionable people, gaily glancing in the bright sunlight, were gathered at the entrance and on the paths cleared of snow, between the Russian izbas and their carved woodwork. The ancient birch trees, their branches laden with snow and icicles, seemed clothed in new and solemn chasubles. As Levin followed the footpath, he said to himself, "Be calm. There's no reason for being agitated. What do you desire? What ails you? Be quiet, you fool." Thus Levin addressed his heart. But the more he endeavored to calm his agitation, the more he was overcome by it, till at last he could hardly breathe. An acquaintance spoke to him as he passed, but Levin did not even notice who it was. He drew near the ice mountains. The sledges flashed down the inclines and were drawn up again by ropes. There was a gay rush of creaking salazkas and the confusion of happy voices. At a little distance there was skating, and among the skaters he soon discovered her. He knew that he was near her from the joy and terror that seized his heart. She was standing on the opposite side, engaged in conversation with a lady, and neither by her toilet nor by her position was she remarkable amongst the throng that surrounded her, but for Levin she stood out from the rest like a rose among nettles. Her presence brightened all around her. Her smile filled the place with glory. "Am I brave enough to go and meet her on the ice?" he thought. The place where she was seemed like a sanctuary, which he did not dare to approach, and he was so distrustful of himself that he almost turned to go away again. Mastering himself by a supreme effort, he brought himself to think that, as she was surrounded by people of every sort, he had as much right as the rest to watch her skate. He therefore went down upon the ice, looking away from her as though she were the sun, but he saw her as he saw the sun, though he did not look at her. This day the ice formed a common meeting ground for people in society. There were also masters in the art of skating who came to show off their talents. Others were learning to skate by holding on chairs and making awkward and distressing gestures. There were young lads and old people who skated as a matter of health. All seemed to Levin to be the favorites of heaven, because they were near Kitty. And these skaters all glided around her, came close to her, even spoke to her, and nevertheless seemed to enjoy themselves, as though they were absolutely fancy-free, and as though it was enough for them that the ice was good and the weather splendid. Nikolai Sherbatsky, Kitty's cousin, in jacket and knickerbockers, was seated on a bench with his skates on when he saw Levin. "Ah," he cried, "the best skater in Russia. There he is. Have you been here long? Put on your skates quick. The ice is first-rate." "I have not my skates with me," replied Levin, surprised that one could speak with such freedom before Kitty, and not losing her out of his sight a single instant, although he did not look at her. He felt that the sun was shining upon him. She evidently did not quite at ease on her high skates, glided towards him from the place where she had been standing, followed by a young man in Russian costume, who was trying to get ahead of her, and making the desperate gestures of an unskilful skater. Kitty herself did not skate with much confidence. She had taken her hands out of the little muff which hung around her neck by a ribbon, and was waving them wildly, ready to grasp the first object that came in her way. She looked at Levin, whom she had just seen for the first time, and smiled at her own timidity. As soon as she had gotten a start, she struck out with her little foot and glided up to her cousin, Sherbatsky, seized him by the arm, and gave Levin a friendly welcome. Never in his imagination had she seemed so charming. Whenever he thought of her, he could easily recall her whole appearance, but especially her lovely blonde head, set so gracefully on her pretty shoulders, and her expression of childlike frankness and goodness. The combination of childlike grace and feminine beauty had a special charm which Levin thoroughly appreciated. But what struck him like something always new and unexpected was her modest, calm, sincere face, which, when she smiled, transported him to a world of enchantment, where he felt at peace and at rest with thoughts like those of his childhood. "When did you come?" she asked, giving him her hand. "Thank you," she added, as she stooped to pick up her handkerchief, which had dropped out of her muff. "I? Oh, a little while ago. Yesterday. That is, today," answered Levin, so disturbed that he did not know what he was saying. "I wanted to call upon you," said he, and when he remembered what his errand was, he blushed, and was more distressed than ever. "I did not know that you skated, and so well." She looked at him closely, as though to divine the reason of his embarrassment. "Your praise is precious. A tradition of your skill as a skater is still floating around," said she, brushing off with her daintily gloved hands the pine needles that had fallen on her muff. "Yes, I used to be passionately fond of skating. I had the ambition to reach perfection." "Seems to me that you do all things with all your heart," said she with a smile. "I should like to see you skate. Put on your skates, and we will skate together." "Skate together?" he thought as he looked at her. "Is it possible?" "I will go and put them on right now," he said, and he hastened to find a pair of skates. "It is a long time, sir, since you have been with us," said the katalschik, the man who rents skates, as he lifted his foot to fit on the skate. "Since your day, we have not had anyone who deserved to be called a master in the art. Are you going to suit you?" he asked as he tightened the strap. "It's all right, only make haste," said Levin, unable to hide the smile of joy which, in spite of him, irradiated his face. "Yes," thought he, "this is life, this is happiness. We will skate together," she said. "Shall I speak now? But I'm afraid to speak, because I am happy, happy with hope. But when? But it must be, it must, down with weakness." Levin arose, took off his cloak, and, after trying his skates in the little house, he struck out across the glare ice, and without effort, allowing his will to guide him, he directed his course towards Kitty. He felt timid about coming up to her, but a smile assured him. She gave him her hand, and they skated side by side, gradually increasing speed, and the faster they went, the closer she held his hand. "I should learn very quickly with you," she said. "I somehow feel confidence in you." "I'm confident in myself when you lean on my arm," he answered, and immediately he was startled at what he had said, and blushed. In fact, he had scarcely uttered the words when, just as the sun goes under a cloud, her face lost all its kindliness, and Levin saw on her smooth brow a wrinkle that indicated what her thought was. "Has anything disagreeable happened to you? But I have no right to ask," he added quickly. "Why so?" "No, nothing disagreeable has happened to me," she said coolly, and immediately continued. "Have you seen Mademoiselle Linon yet?" "Not yet." "Go to see her. She's so fond of you." "What does this mean? I've offended her. Oh God, have pity upon me," thought Levin, and skated swiftly towards the old French governess, with the little gray curls, who was watching them from a bench. She received him like an old friend, smiling and showing her false teeth. "Yes, but how we have grown up," she said, turning her eyes to Kitty, "and how demure we are. Tiny Bear has grown large," continued the old governess, still smiling, and she recalled his jest about the 3 young ladies whom he had named after the 3 bears in the English story. "Do you remember that you called them so?" He had entirely forgotten it, but she had laughed at this pleasantry for 10 years, and still enjoyed it. "Now go and skate. Doesn't our Kitty take to it beautifully?" When Levin rejoined Kitty, her face was no longer severe. Her eyes had regained their fresh and kindly expression, but it seemed to him that in her very kindliness there was something that was not exactly natural, and he felt troubled. After speaking of the old governess and her eccentricities, she asked him about his own life. "Don't you get tired of living in the country?" she asked. "No, I don't get tired of it. I'm very busy," he replied, feeling that she was bringing him into the atmosphere of indifference, which she had resolved henceforth to throw about her, and which he could not escape now any more than he could at the beginning of the winter. "Shall you stay long?" asked Kitty. "I do not know," he answered, without regard to what he was saying. The idea of falling back into the tone of calm friendship, and perhaps of returning home without reaching any decision, was revolting to him. "Why don't you know?" "I don't know why." "It depends on you," he said, and instantly he was horrified at his own words. She either did not understand his words, or did not want to understand them, but seeming to stumble once or twice, she made an excuse to leave him, and having spoken to Mademoiselle Linon, she went to the little house where her skates were removed by the waiting women. "Good heavens, what have I done? O God, have pity upon me, and come to my aid," was Levin's secret prayer, and feeling the need of taking some violent exercise, he began to describe a series of intricate curves on the ice. At this instant, a young man, the best among the recent skaters, came out of the cafe with his skates on and a cigarette in his mouth. Without stopping, he ran towards the stairway, and without even changing the position of his arms, ran down the steps and darted out upon the ice. "That is a new trick," said Levin to himself, and he climbed the staircase to imitate it. "Don't you kill yourself, it needs practice," shouted Nikolai Sherbatsky. Levin went up the steps, got as good a start as he could, and then flew down the stairway, preserving his balance with his hands. But at the last step he stumbled, made a violent effort to recover himself, regained his equilibrium, and glided out gaily upon the ice. "Charming, glorious fellow," thought Kitty, at this moment coming out of the little house with Mademoiselle Linon, and looking at him with a gentle smile, as though he were a beloved brother. "Is it my fault? Have I done anything very bad? People say coquetry. I know that I don't love him, but it is pleasant to be with him, and he is so charming, but what made him say that?" Seeing Kitty departing with her mother, who had come for her, Levin, flushed with his violent exercise, stopped and pondered. Then he took off the skates and joined the mother and daughter at the gate. "Very glad to see you," said the princess. "We receive on Thursdays, as usual. Today, then?" "We shall be delighted to see you," she answered dryly. This haughtiness troubled Kitty, and she could not restrain herself from tempering the effect of her mother's chilling manner. She turned to Levin and said with a smile, "We shall see you, I hope." At this moment, Stepan Arkadyevitch, with hat on one side, with animated face and bright eyes, entered the garden. At the sight of his wife's mother, he assumed a melancholy and humiliated expression, and replied to the questions which she asked about Dolly's health. When he had finished speaking in a low and broken voice with his mother-in-law, he straightened himself up and took Levin's arm. "Now, then, shall we go? I have been thinking of you all the time, and I'm very glad that you came," he said, with a significant look into his eyes. Come on," replied the happy Levin, who did not cease to hear the sound of a voice saying, "We shall see you, I hope," or to recall the smile that accompanied the words. "At the English Hotel or the Hermitage? It's all one to me." "At the English Hotel, then," said Stepan Arkadyevitch, who chose this restaurant because he owed more there than at the Hermitage, and it seemed unworthy of him, so to speak, to avoid it. "You have an izvoshchik? So much the better, for I sent off my carriage." While they were on their way, not a word was spoken. Levin was thinking of how Kitty's face had changed. He passed through alternations of hope and despair, all the time saying that there was no sense in despairing. Nevertheless, he felt that there was another man, since he had heard those words, "We shall see you, I hope," and seen that reassuring smile. Stepan Arkadyevitch made out the menu. "You like turbot, don't you?" were his first words on entering the restaurant. "What?" exclaimed Levin. "Turbot? Yes, I'm excessively fond of turbot.